Right, Alex, ready? Just turn this music off then.
Oh yeah. Right, yeah.
Hey guys, thank you for coming to our second Spree meetup. Last one we did was in May, so yeah, thanks for coming. We've had one last minute dropout today, unfortunately. Brian Mahoney from Go Dynamo in Canada was going to present. Had to drop out. It's actually on a plane to San Francisco right now. But we've still got three really good talks. We've got Joe Stanton talking about functional front ends with Spree. So he's talking about some of the Facebook React stuff that we've been doing on a project with Spree. Not sure why, but the meetup description was a bit more bland than that, but you know, so there's going to be some interesting stuff there. We've got Wes from Spree all the way over from DC to do a talk on Dasher, dashing, building dashboards in dashing, and then we'll finish with Paul, who's going to talk about some of the 3D secure integration that we'll be doing, which is more sort of specific to a European audience. So less of me, and we'll get cracking with Joe.
Hello. Right. So, I'm going to talk about functional front ends with Spree. Bit of a last minute title, if I'm honest. But I wanted to talk about some of the interesting things we've been doing on the front end with Spree, why using something like Spree is so important in enabling you to do actually truly more innovative things and not battle with the technology that you're using, and ultimately create a better site with better user experience, and just something that functions better overall. So a bit of background. So we're doing quite a major project at the moment with Spree. We chose it for quite a few reasons, the main of which being that we don't want to build everything from scratch, but we want to use all the tools that we actually like. So things like Ruby, Rails, RSpec, all of the things that we know how to use, that we enjoy using, and take them and use them in an e-commerce platform and not have to implement everything from scratch. So that's nice, and we started using that, and it's great, and we know exactly how to customize things, and it just works really well. So there are a few negatives and essential things that happen with a lot of e-commerce platforms. Inevitably, there's a lot of integration work to be doing, and Spree is really helpful with that because it provides, you'll hear a little bit more maybe about Wombat, which is a kind of hosted behind-the-scenes message queue kind of thing that does lots of infrastructure stuff. So you can build tons of integrations with all these third-party services, so ERP systems, delivery systems, lots of different things. And the point being that you don't have to bundle all of this stuff together within your app, which just turns it into a bit of a mess. We like to, we're known at Red Badger for doing, really interesting stuff on the client side of like really nice responsive pages, really effective visualizations. We've done tons of work around that sort of thing, and we wanted to use that our skill set basically on this project as well. And there's a few areas that can be applied to, things like filtering of products, having a nice responsive checkout process, and all that sort of thing. A lot of things that you see, quite a lot of online retailers with using huge platforms don't really have the capability to really craft that experience. So Spree is really useful for that sort of thing. So I didn't mean to just say Spree's good. So e-commerce is inevitably really complex, and how do you avoid turning everything into a complete mess? So I spoke a bit about the integration work that we're doing, and how we don't want that to affect the app. So in future, we don't want to have to deploy new versions of the app when integrations change and just end up with a really messy system. So this is something I think Spree gets really right, and you can use it to your advantage, but you need to be quite cautious about exactly what you use and what you don't use and where you draw the lines. So the way that you avoid a mess is to divide and conquer. So using modular design of building tiny little microservices that solve a specific problem. So in the past, you've seen massive e-commerce systems that allow people to do merchandising, reporting of all of their sales metrics and things like that, and then have all of the user-facing UI as exactly the same project, using tons and tons of front-end logic for lots of things, and all of it's all stuck together, and it makes it a bit of a mess, and it makes it hard to change. So Spree obviously found this out quite early on, and as being an open source project, I suppose it helps to split things up and be a bit more modular, so you can accept pull requests and things like that from everybody. So Spree is very modular. It is split into all of these different modules. Some of these are more significant than others, but basically you have things like an API and the core, which are like really important parts of Spree, and then you have things like the front end, so that will be the user-facing site that you can buy things on and everything, to the back end, so the administration section where you might merchandise your products, add new descriptions, manage configuration, all that sort of thing, and then some smaller parts that are slightly less relevant, and they're all just packaged as Ruby gems, right? And more than just being an implementation detail, this actually encourages you to think about how much of that you really need. And we're using Spree because we don't want to reinvent the wheel. Spree deals with taxation, shipping, calculating order basket sizes, tons of different things. And we don't want to implement all of that from scratch because it's boring and it's not very cost effective. But we can use all the good parts of Spree and maybe leave out some parts that we that are not bad, but things that we could potentially improve upon. And if you want to start a new e-commerce site that really differentiates itself, you might have to do this sort of thing. So the API and the core are really the only essential parts of that, and you can kind of slot things in around it. So one example of the things that you can slot around a RESTful API, a nice core, is single page apps. And so this seems a bit of a weird thing to kind of relate, but it actually has tons of benefits, because I've always kind of enjoyed using single page apps. They're very responsive. Sometimes they make a lot of sense. They're really overused sometimes, but in things that are really super UI heavy, you're going through a process, it just makes sense for things to sometimes be small, self-contained single page apps. And yeah, so I used to hate single page apps because I used to hate developing single page apps. Things like Backbone and all of the different frameworks that I think I've used, about 5 or 6 frameworks that never really sat right with me, and I just found them really overcomplicated, and I didn't know ever what they were adding to the project. And so lots of problems that I used to have with single page apps is one, that they're just really complicated. There was lots of duplication of logic, writing a new model layer, another controller, like you've got MVC on the server and you've got another set of MVC on the client, and it's strange, and it seems like a real overhead for not very much benefit. They're fragile a lot of the time. They don't work in a lot of different browsers. You have lots of different quirks that are kind of hard to work out. Traditionally, they've had very bad SEO. So, I mean, effectively, you are presenting a blank slate to Google. I mean, that's changing more recently, but ultimately, it's still not a very good thing, I don't think. And also, you get lots of weird problems with kind of things being in a strange state. So, this kind of summarizes things of using a single page app where it's well defined is amazing for UX. So things like a multi-stage checkout process. Imagine you're buying something on the way home and you're on the tube, and you click on a product and you add it to your basket and you start the checkout process. And then imagine that you lose connectivity and you've gone halfway through the checkout process and you kind of want to pick up where you left off. And it seems like we should be able to do that these days. You can get into lots of strange states where you want to continue doing something. You might be over a really high latency connection, as 3G in general is. And when you've got a multi-stage checkout process, they're all kind of annoying things and just slow you down in general. So building like a checkout process as a single page app could actually be really nice and give you amazing UX. So you could cache those things in local storage and say, sorry, we can't complete your order yet, but press to retry when you've next got connectivity. Or it can save all of your details locally, and there's all sorts of optimizations you can do. But I've seen this used somewhere else, terming the development experience DX. And so it's kind of like to get a little bit better UX, you need to suffer a lot of rubbish. And so that's until the tools got better. So React, Facebook React, is a really simple client-side framework that just does the view layer of things. It doesn't try to be something that it's not. It's actually very simple. And it's a great tool for building this kind of experience to enhance some pages like a checkout process or filtering some products down or something without all of the problems that single page apps have. So things like, it's just super simple. And because it's simple, you still keep lots of logic on your server side, so you don't duplicate it all over the place. It's deployed on Facebook.com and Instagram and tons of other quite popular sites, and so the browser support for it is really good. So it works down to IE8 and even IE7, probably not IE6, but I think that's long gone now these days. And so this is a tool that we've been using like really successfully. But the most important thing about it, and I think how it relates back to Spree, is that there's a gem called React Rails that will allow you to integrate your front end stuff with your back end, and that means that you can render these React components on your server side. So you can have all of the benefits of a really nice user experience, an offline checkout process, product filtering, all of this kind of thing, without losing the real important things, which are SEO, which is hugely important for bottom line in general. And you can create pages that rendered immediately when they're viewed on a mobile device, and then enhanced afterwards just by the app starting up. And seeing this in action is actually really quite impressive. And I did have a nice demo of this, but I basically broke it. So I don't have that demo, unfortunately. And the thing is, this is still quite difficult to do, but it's quite a new thing. The first time I ever heard about this, just upstairs, we had a talk from a guy from Airbnb who's doing this with like server-side rendering, and that was with Backbone originally, and he's since switched that out to React because it's just such a good tool for the job. So we can build things like a better checkout process. At the moment, on the project that we're doing, we've got lots of small single-page apps for each part of the checkout process. But at the end of that, I personally feel that we should collapse all of them into one state, one giant checkout process that has lots of interactivity and things. We've got some really strange requirements for being able to go back in your order and change delivery addresses of things and stuff, and all of that's so hard to do server-side because you're dealing with an inherently stateless thing, and you know, in the browser it's the perfect way to deal with things like that, you know. So as I said before, you know, patchy connectivity, high latency and stuff, it really helps to just push all that stuff to the client. So building isolated micro apps to do this sort of thing that just talk to the Spree API. And so you're not pushing all of this complexity back into Spree, because in the end that will come around to bite, basically, and you'll end up with a really unmaintainable application. So you know, other things that you could do with it, building other single-page apps for things, you could have much better administration. So the Spree admin tools are quite limited, but quite functional in what they do. But if you imagine somebody who is in control of product pricing or something, and they want to introduce a sweeping change in lots of prices over the site, things like that just take ages, and they're clicking through, and you know, having that, they're just really laborious, and it stops people from doing things properly. So it stops people from better merchandising their products when they're just spending time, you know, sorting out really, you know, detailed things that are just unimportant. It's just really time consuming. So you could build better admin tools, better merchandising tools, and better reporting tools. So there's a few plugins for Spree, and there's a couple of services. I think one's called Giraffe or something, which is like a sales reporting tool. And you know, they work really well because they sit outside of your application, and they're suited really for the specific use case that their scenario encounters. So so that's the kind of things that you could do. And but I guess the takeaway is that for the first time, basically, because we've got a tech stack that we're really comfortable with the whole way down, we're not integrating with an awful system. We've got Spree at the core of everything we do. We use it for all of the important and serious stuff. We don't re-implement any of that, but it's so flexible because of the API and the distributed kind of Wombat message queue processing stuff, that we can build a really effective site that solves a lot of the needs of all the different users, whether that's people from the business or end users, like mobile users, all this kind of thing, and not have to re-implement code all over the place and not lose lots of the benefits that the traditional web apps have. So I had one example of, so I already spoke about Airbnb. They do this all over the place, and they have client and server rendering everywhere, and it's a really nice experience visiting their site. And there's also one more. So this site, if you're in the habit of buying girls' clothes, which, you know, interestingly, this is an example of a site. So this is powered by Spree. This is Air, which I was informed of earlier, and is part of Bonobos. Yeah. So this is really interesting because I think it's actually quite a bold move. This whole application is a single-page app. I think it's powered by Backbone or something, but it talks directly to the Spree API. So you can buy something, you can put it in your bag, you get a basket. Obviously, I'm into my skinny jeans, So I've got quite a few in there, and you can press checkout, and this whole process is just over here at the side, and it's just a really nice experience. So you can build this kind of thing, and you can be bold about it now because you don't have the kind of risks of losing lots of SEO potential and everything like that. So
this site as well was built in 96 man days, V1 to from design all the way through to being live to customers.
Wow, yeah, and that's testament to, like not reinventing the wheel when you don't need to, and just focusing on a really nice user experience, which Spree allows you to do. So that's all I got, really.
Good. Next up, Wes. Broke the demo last minute.
I've got the laptop now.
Yeah.
It's a great excuse. All right, that's really hard to see. All right, my name is Wes Ketchum. I work for Spree. I primarily work on Wombat, which is our paid product. So some people here, if you use Wombat or if you use our customer support, you've probably interacted with me once or twice. I don't get a lot of chance to work on the open source side of our company, so whenever I get a chance to do something like this, I always jump at it. So I'm going to be talking today about building a dashboard using Dashing. Has anyone heard of Dashing or played around with it at all? So Dashing is really great because it's an open source dashboard tool and it's really easy to use. So I'm going to just kind of give you an overview of that and how you can use it with Spree. So just talking about the motivation for why I wanted to do this. So I want to give a shout out to Chris Marr, which is in the top right, and his friend Carl Durante. They both work at Custom Ink, and Chris Marr used to be an employee at Spree. And so a couple months ago, I was working on a feature, which our product was Hub at the time, and we were building out dashboards for people. And we're using a database called InfluxDB, which is a time series database, and it's really, really great for querying for data on different time series. And we had the front end was built using Rickshaw, which is a JavaScript library built on D3, and you can make really awesome graphs with it. And so these graphs were awesome. They're complex. You could drill down between week and day and hour. You can see these nice metrics of when orders were coming in, when products were coming in, and stuff like that. So they were going to talk about dashboards, and I was really excited because they're related to what I was doing at the time. And they showed Dashing, and I loved Dashing. I just immediately got it, and I loved it for its simplicity. So Dashing is designed to be shown on TVs in the office. Is basically the motivation behind why they designed it. So it's completely different than what I was building at the time because you're not going to go up and you're not going to be picking different hours and days and weeks to kind of see these different graphs. You're just going to want to have very clean, simple graphs that someone could walk by and immediately look at it and be like, oh, that's awesome. That's what's happening in our system right now. And it looks great. It's really stylish and it's really easy to use. So I immediately jumped into it, and when I had the chance to come here to do a presentation, I wanted to try to tie it into Spree and kind of see what I could build out of it. So I think these two products they pair really well together, and one of the main reasons this ties in well to the last presentation is how modular it is. I heard you mention Giraffe. And back in the day, Giraffe used to be embedded into the Spree admin. There's a tab for it, and so you'd go into the Spree admin, and you would have all of your analytics right there. So I also like I also like how Spree is very modular, and I think this is really nice because you can pull out your dashboard and your statistics and get it out of Spree itself, and you have it, and it's a completely owned service. So they're both open source, which is, if you're here, you probably like open source, so I think you would really like Dashing. They have similar philosophies, so they give you a really great framework to build off of. they're not going to do everything for you. You know, they make the hard things really easy. So you're going to go in there, and if you want to get your hands dirty and make your own dashboard and not just have a paid product where you're going to put in your API credentials and it just shovel data into it and it's going to do everything for you, this is not the tool for you. You know, you're going to have to spend a little bit of time maybe customizing it and doing how you want to do it. There's a lot of really good developer plugins also for GitHub, Travis, and Pingdom and stuff, so you can kind of have an operations-facing dashboard showing orders and stuff like that, and at the same time have your Travis CI builds and your different GitHub commits and stuff like that. I also think dashboards work really well with e-commerce. You know, you can see how much money is flowing through on a daily basis, and everyone likes seeing that. You know, you want to be able to go into work and kind of see what you're doing is having a huge impact. You're seeing orders go up. You're seeing money go up. It's a great feeling. And Spree already has a very robust API, so it's easy to plug into services like Dashing. So a little bit about Dashing. It's developed by Shopify. It's a Sinatra-based framework. So again, it's a standalone application. And so it's really easy to deploy to Heroku also. You can get a dashboard up and running in just a couple of seconds. It utilizes Batman.js, which not too many people have heard of it. I definitely did not hear about it, even though it has an amazing name. I did not hear about it before looking into this. There's just so many JavaScript frameworks out there. Nowadays, it's pretty overwhelming. So since it uses JavaScript framework, it's able to update the DOM in real time. And so whenever you have stats flowing in, you're just going to see those numbers go up and up, and it makes it perfect for a nice TV display. And it's really flexible on how you want to get data. You know, you can either pull data, like if you have a Spree API. I'm going to be pulling data from the Spree API, but you can also push to your different widgets in your dashboard. So this is just how you would get started. It's really, really easy to just set up a dashboard. I'm going to do a demo in a little bit, so I won't spend much time there. So this is the structure of a dashboard, of a Dashing application. And there's a lot of different files and directories, but really what we're concerned about is these three. These are the three main parts of a Dashing app. So there's dashboards, widgets, and then jobs. This is a dashboard. When you first start a Dashing app, this is what you see. And a dashboard is just a collection of widgets. That's all that is. So up here you see a little piece of code at the very top that shows you what the dashboard looks like. And it's just an ERB file that, since it's a Sinatra app, if you would go to the root and then /sample, it would look for a file called sample.erb, and it would just load that file. And so it uses Gridster, which is a JavaScript. It's a JavaScript plugin. And that's why it's set up like this. It has the top div class called Gridster. And then everything has to be an unordered list. And then Gridster picks it up, and it's able to make those nice little boxes and put it in a grid for you. So each widget itself is what you see in between the LI elements. It's a div, and it's represented with a data ID and a data view. So the data view is what widget it is. So if the data view is a number, it's going to be a number widget, and it makes it really dry because when you're able to list something like data view as a number, then you define the widget later, and it just loads up that HTML file and drops it inside that div. So you're just not constantly repeating yourself and putting a bunch of widgets inside these dashboards. Okay, so the next main part is a widget. And this is the main container of data inside a dashboard. And it's made up of 3 files. There's a CoffeeScript file, and that kind of handles processing the data. There's HTML to handle the layout, and then Sass for the design. This is what the widget.html file will look like. And so that HTML file is transformed into the widget on the bottom. It uses these things called Batman data bindings. I don't know too much about Batman, so I'm not going to get too into it. But basically, when you have stuff like data bind, current, short end, number, and it's a way to push data out to those widgets. Here's the CoffeeScript file. This is for kind of processing the data once you receive it. You don't need anything in these coffee files. It's just if you just have the name of the coffee class at the top, then Batman will be able to handle it for you. But if you want to do some extra fancy stuff with the data once the widget's received, then when you see stuff like this this up arrow with the 80%. That's all done in the CoffeeScript file. Once it gets the data, it's able to calculate what's already there, what you have, and it's able to figure out the percentage and then display an arrow up or down based on if the number's gone up or down. And then the last part is just jobs. And this is the way that you get data into your widgets. And it uses a gem called Rufus Scheduler, which is kind of like cron. So you can set it to run every couple seconds, every couple minutes, every like hour or so. And what this does is it looks for a data ID called Karma. It looks for a widget that has a data ID Karma, and it pushes data out to it. And it uses that current key, and it sends that number out to it, and the widget's able to get that and then display the number. Okay, so Spree. Spree already has, like I said, a really nice API to get orders, products, return authorizations, and there's a whole lot more. The examples I'm going to show you is just dealing strictly with orders. It has a nicely structured JSON. So like the previous presenter said, there's some APIs out there that are really, really awful. Spree's API I really like it. It's nice working with it. It's easy to parse out the data and get all the information you need. And it uses Ransack for the API, so it's really easy to query for different fields that you want. Okay, so I'm gonna show some demos. I'm gonna show. It's really tiny. Can you guys see that okay? It's really small. Is that good?
Yeah.
All right. Okay, when you want to start a dashing, you just run dashing new test dashboard, and it's going to handle everything for you. And then when you want to start the server, you just run dash and start. And it's as simple as that. You have a dashboard running right off the bat. If I didn't have a server already running, it would run right off the bat. Okay. So that's the dashboard that you see when you first create a dashing app. It's just a couple different widgets that show you how many different widgets they have. These are kind of the standard widgets. There's a list, there's a graph at the bottom, then there's like the number widget and everything. And then you can. So if you want to, so what's really awesome about dashing is that they have all these third-party plugins that you can install pretty effortlessly and get up and running. So I'm going to show you a very simple widget that I built for getting the total number of orders throughout your day. So if you have this dashing up in your office, this dashboard, you'll be able to walk through and just see your daily count of orders and the daily count of values. So you have these these different files that are in gist, and you just have to grab the gist ID of it. And if you go to your app and just do dashing install and give it the gist ID, it's able to grab the job that you created, and you see right there that it just creates that file. The only thing that it doesn't do for you, since you control the layout, it's not going to take the ERB. It's not going to take this part and put it in there for you. You just have to do that manually. It's so tiny. So this is the dashboard that you see. This is all the groups of the widgets. So you can take that list and then just drop it in right here. And then if you go to your Spree order value job, this is what's going to hit the Spree API, and it's going to update that widget with those values. You just have to get all you need is an API key and a URL to reach it at. All right, then just start your dashboard up again. I thought for my first ever presentation, it would be great to live code. So this is why you hear people say, watch out for the perils of live coding. So I need to just check this out a little bit, but I'm not gonna do that now. It's probably something really simple. So when you have that, I'll just walk you through some of the files that are on there, and I'll just be able to explain how it works. So here's the job. I told you there's really three main parts of getting a dashing app. It's really just the widget, the job, and then adding that widget into the dashboard. And so here's the job that's going to run every 5 minutes. It just calls up to the Spree API, and it's looking for orders created at a date that's greater than today. And then it's going to parse out all the orders, and it's going to get the order value. And this is actually getting how much the order total is, so you can see how much money is coming through your system on a daily basis. And then it's going to look for the Spree order value. It's going to look for an ID with that attached to it, which should be finding that, and then it would push out data to it. So I have a backup to show you. So that's just like one little dashboard they can do, and those dashboard widgets are really simple, but they all have the same kind of style. If you use one number widget, then they're all going to have a green background, and they're all going to display data the same way. It's going to have the same color font and everything. So I wanted to kind of expand that and use the number widget in multiple different places, along with graphs, to show you how you can change the color, and how you can really kind of customize it to however you would like. So this is the same kind of concept I'm using here is what I did there. It's using the number widget, but for this, it's going to get all the order states that are throughout the day, and it's going to do the same query, and then inside the app, it's going to then just take out all the different states and group them together and display it like this. So you have the checkout phase, which is like address and cart and everything, then complete orders, and then shipped and canceled. And then also just an alternative way of displaying the data is a bar graph. So this is a way of showing how much money is coming through your system, and it shows the past 5 days of data, and also just a bar graph. And the last one I'll show you is the same concept, but instead of showing order value, it just shows the total number of orders that have come through your system in the past 5 days. So yeah, that's it. Here's a couple of links, some additional notes. All this code is up on GitHub, Westcatch, Spree dashboard, and then the 2 different gist files that you can check out. That's all. Thanks.
Cool. So many people using that with Spree at the moment.
I haven't heard of anyone. So there's a if you go to their GitHub page, they have a wiki that lists additional resources, and they have all these different plugins that people wrote. And I googled all around the place and couldn't find any Spree plugins, which leads me to believe there's probably not too many people. If someone's using it with Spree, they'll probably have some kind of plugin or mention of it. And I couldn't find it anywhere, so I'm not really sure.
Anyone else got any questions for Wes?
Yeah, it's sort of it's very easy to customize the data visualization stuff you see on the dashboard.
So you can customize it a little bit. So those are standard widgets, and like I said, it's a framework. And they give you a couple of widgets just to get up and going, like numbers and stuff like that. So if you're using those, then they're kind of set, but it's all very easily modifiable. The widgets themselves are just HTML files, so you can make it look however you want to. So for example, like for these ones, the standard number, it has like a blue background and a white text, but I just went into the files themselves and just changed and added the color to them myself.
Okay.
Any more questions? Good. Cool. Thanks. Wes, it's awesome. So next it's Paul, who's going to get into some code and show us how we've integrated to 3D Secure.
Yep.
This is
Which one is that?
Yes. So 3D Secure integration with Spree. What is 3D Secure? It is originally designed to be an additional security layer for online credit and debit card transactions. And it is based on a 3-domain model, hence the 3D, which is not something I expected. I just thought it was a marketing thing. So it's based on acquirer domain, issuer domain, and interoperability of domain. And in real-world terms, this acquirer, that's going to be your storefront, that's going to be you. Issuer is going to be the bank of the customer. And the last one is generally going to be your gateway. Most people are going to integrate with gateways in Spree. And they are going to handle the Visa and MasterCard transactions for you. So why do you want to use 3D Secure? The main reason really is it offers companies a liability cover for transactions that are verified by the 3D Secure checks. What this means is that if an order bounces or is fraudulent, you don't have to take the hit, they take the hit for you, so you don't have to pay the customer back his money. Visa or MasterCard is going to do it for you, which is pretty important and pretty nice. And another reason is that it decreases the risk of other people being able to check out with other people's cards. And 3D Secure is also, right now it's just based on a simple password phase. So you get a screen, you type in a password you set in your banking. But they also experimented with key cards and different other solutions, but that is not widespread at all. Like the password solution is by far the most used. So generally, how 3D Secure works, this is pretty basic, and it depends on the issuer and the gateway. But basically, your storefront talks to the gateway, sends the card details, and then the gateway either tells you that it's an ordinary card transaction and it goes through, or it is 3D secured, and then it sends you back some 3D auth values. And then you have to send those values to the issuer, which in this case is the banking. And the bank then checks those fields. It sends a result back to you. You send the bank results back to the gateway, and then the gateway finally tells you if it's okay or not. It seems kind of cumbersome, and it adds quite a few requests to the checkout process, but the security and what 3DSecure offers you is generally worth it, and a lot of customers are going to ask for this. So right now we're going to try to not to anger the demo gods. So my plan was to actually try to implement this from scratch using a basic Spree demo store. So this is a basic checkout. And as I said, this is how Spree looks by default when you set up the Spree samples. And this might kind of tie into the gateway provider you're using. We're using SagePay, but the general implementation is going to be extremely similar. And each gateway provider is going to give you some test cards. So we're just going to use the Visa one. And right now, this gateway is set up for 3DSecure. So what happens when I try to do this is that it tells me that I have to redirect my customer to a URL and I have to pass some values with this. If you've never seen this before, it might seem kind of confusing, so you might be tempted to just check the log to get a bit more information. Is this really small? No. So here you see that it actually raises a gateway error. So Spree like tells you something is wrong. And depending on your gateway, you get certain fields and certain information. This is what SagePay tells you, but every gateway is going to tell you something similar. And the detail pretty much outlines what you have to do. This is usually the point where you kind of have to read the gateway documentation. But the process is going to be similar, exactly the same for almost every single gateway. So we go back and see, okay, we have to add some fields, and we have to handle this error message. First, we can add the fields. So we have to add a few columns to our payments. And we also, since we got this message, we want to handle this response from the gateway. And I prepared some code. I just commented it out. And this kind of relies on you knowing how Spree works. Spree is built around decorators. So we have the Spree, as Joe and Wes mentioned. Spree is very modular. And you can modify those modules however you want. You can extend them or add new methods, new classes. And this exact step is handled in a processing in the checkout. And what we want to do is we want to extend the handle process step. So we just make an alias method for the initial one, the original default. And then we just add this. If status equals 3D auth, we do something else. We want to add these fields to the payment object, and then we raise this gateway error. And what this does, it sends us back to the payment state in Spree, which means we can also comment this. which means in the payment itself, the actual payment states are handled in a checkout controller. So before payments, if an order has any secure payments, we want to redirect them to the URL that is set in the initial ACS URL. That is mentioned here. So the changes to be done right now should do that. It should handle the values we get back from the gateway, and it should redirect them to, or it should render a view that we made. I can actually, yeah, we can do that. So right now, if you just do this, I don't know if I know that. I am there as well. Okay, there it is. There we go. So if we try this again, so right now we added the necessary fields to the payment. We handle the response from the gateway, and we redirect them, or we interrupt the flow if the gateway tells us that this is a treaty secure. So the reason why we got this screen is the next step. This is kind of dependent on your gateway. You can either do it in an iframe, or you can redirect them to the banking site. And also, this is going to be the issuer. We are, if I go back to my keynote, oh, I don't have a pointer, but anyway, we just finished a card details, the top one, and we handle the second one. We handle the values we get back. So now we send them to the issuer, the 3D fields, and how we handle that is this. We render authenticate 3D secure, which is just a view. And currently, this is just a self-signing JavaScript. We set these values that we go back, the MD and the PAREC. And if you want to redirect them entirely, we just send this, we just submit this form to the URL that the gateway tells us, and then we're taken to the issuer site. But you can also put this in an iframe, which is going to slightly change your implementation, but it's going to work basically the same. So that is the reason why we just got this yellow page. We sent this form, and the issuer filled in these values for us. And you can see that it fills in the cost and everything. Oh. And now we try to send this back to our website, but we have no route to handle the callback, so we have to implement that. So we go to routes. We add this one. We're just going to create a 3D secure controller. The only thing this is going to do is handle this callback. And this is a slightly big one. First, we want to set the order. We're going to use some values in it. And then we want to contact the gateway with the values we got from the issuer. So if you're going to go back to the keynote, currently, we've done the card details, we've done a 3D auth. We sent the fields to the issuer, which was the yellow screen, the yellow form. And we click submit, which is the issuer's results being sent back to our storefront. So now we have to handle those. And this is done in SagePay response. Again, this is tied to SagePay, but the process and your implementation is going to be very similar, no matter the gateway. So what we do is we simply make a net HTTP requests, and then we add the MD and the parres values we got from the issuer. And I think these are industry standard values. So every issuer is going to send these exact values and these exact names. And again, I failed to mention this at the very beginning, but you can't just simply say that every Visa card is going to be 3D secure, because this is handled by the issuer's bank, or the customer's bank, sorry. So one bank might 3D secure every single Visa card, but another bank might just let them through. So that is why you have to interrupt after you get the response from the gateway. Otherwise, we could just like filter them out when they type in their card information. So yeah, once we got the values back from the issuer, we then send these to the gateway. And then we get a response from the gateway, which is here. And depending on this response, we do a few different things. First of all, we get some additional values from the gateway, which we want to update the payment info to do. This is mainly for if you want to do any kind of repaying the customer, or if they want to do any historic lookups in the gateway history or the banking history. You have to have these values tied to your payment objects. And then we get to if the status is okay. Then we simply say that the payment is complete. And these are kind of SagePay's policy, but they want you to blank out certain values once the transaction is done. And then we update the payment total for the order, and then simply call order next, which in Spree takes it to the next state, which in this case would be complete. And if the order is completed, we update the notice and we redirect to the correct path and add a token if it is a guest checkout. If the response is not okay, we set the payment to failure. And again, we update these values according to policy. We add the status detail to the flash notice so you can actually see what's wrong. The gateway or the issuer is always going to add some kind of detail, some kind of logging to the entire process to tell you what is going on and to help you debug it. And you redirect them to the order state. And in this instance, the order state is always payment, so they will always go back to the payment state. And this rescue clause is simply if this payment is not found, which I never experienced. But if it is not found, you should have a rescue clause, right? It is good practice. So let's try and see if this works. I just have to make sure that everything is in place. Processing, authentication, development. Oh yeah, one last thing. You can see it used here through the secure callback. Yeah, here. This is simply the URL that your gateway tells you to use. So in this case, this is going to be the test URL, but in production you want a different URL. So you want to put this in your environment config files. You don't want to hard code the URL because that's not good. So currently in development, we use this one. So yeah, let's see what happens. Okay. Cart checkout. This is one interesting thing with Spree, by the way. It adds the shipping costs there, but not there. And the order went through. Now we can go in the Spree admin. And this one is the one we just made. And you can see if you go into the payment itself, you get certain failed entries. And these are obviously the ones we tried but failed. It is pretty nice. You can tell if there's a lot of failed entries in your checkout process. It might be something is wrong or something is too difficult for the customer. It's just like nice to have them in the history. And it is set to paid because in Spree itself, it's tied back to the 3D Secure controller, is that if an order's payment totals are the same as the payment amounts for the payments, then Spree assumes the order is paid. This kind of depends on how you want to handle transactions. If you want to authorize them directly in the storefront, or if you want to wait and do it on the ERP level once the order is actually shipped. It kind of depends on your approach. Currently, in this approach, you take payment straight away. But if you want to wait, then you have to set the payment itself to, I think it's going to be pending. But yeah, you can't set it to complete straight away. But again, that's a slight implementation choice you have to make depending on your customer. And yeah, finally, you want to write tests for this. I haven't actually made anyone yet. We have a few ready to go in RSpec and Cucumber actually. But I'm also going to make a blog post about this where I go into everything in more detail, add some code, and show you how to make proper tests. But yeah, that's pretty much it. That is how you integrate 3D Secure in Spree. So any questions?
Did you have to remove the confirmation stage from the checkout to get the payment to
go through once it is actually done?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good question, and not really. Spree actually maps out the different states you've been to already. So if you call order next, it skips the confirmation. But yeah, if you do a lot of the checkout flow, if you modify the checkout flow drastically, you might have to, instead of just calling order next, tell it to go order next until complete. So you go through every state until you actually get to complete. But yeah, that is depending on how much you modify the checkout flow itself. Any other ones? No? Thanks.
So I think just to sum up, we'll probably do another one in the new year. There'll be lots of exciting stuff that's happened between now and then. I think we'll have our first product live. I know Surfplay will be live by then, so hopefully they can present some of that stuff. And for now, there's more beers and pizza, just so stick around and network and have meet some other people that are working with Spree, and we'll update the meetup in due course. Cheers.